Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Looking for Love in All the Wrong Dust Jackets, a show where three disgruntled harpies talk to you about everything we love in romance, whether that's books, movies, TV shows, whatever we like. My name's Liz.
I'm Danny.
And I'm Wiggles.
And welcome to the episode. Today, for our very spooky Halloween episode, we are recording Crimson Peak, the Guillermo del Toro movie that came out in 2015.
Crimson Peak.
But before we get into that, I have to warn the people. I have to let them know that we are crass and unhinged. We are terribly unladylike. And we're going to talk about all of the naughty times using all four-letter words.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we spoil whatever we talk about, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
But a lot of the things that we talk about in books, movies, you can still enjoy knowing what happens in the plot. I would say that this is not one of them.
Oh, yeah, no.
So if you've never seen it and you intend to, pause this, go make yourself some popcorn, get a little hot chocolate, tea, maybe some wine. I don't know what your life is. Watch a little movie, snuggle in, and then come back to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wiggles, tell me some fun facts about Crimson Peak.
Okay, I have a few here. So Benedict Cumberbatch was originally supposed to be Sir Thomas Sharpe.
Oh.
Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Hiddleston are kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
Also, Charlie Hunnam and Tom Hiddleston both auditioned for the role of Thor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Neither got the part, but obviously Hiddleston. So...
Hey.
Hiddleston became Loki. That's what she was working on.
Yeah. This is a bad list of fun facts, y'all. Okay, here's something. Crimson Peak was shot in 68 days, which is significantly shorter than all of Guillermo del Toro's other films. Pacific Rim took 100 days. Hellboy took 135. The house that was used in the film was built in its entirety for the shoot. Fans can't go and visit it. Sorry if I got your hopes up there for a second. Fans can't go and visit it. However, it was torn down after filming finished in order to make room on the set. Emma Stone was also originally cast in the movie, and then obviously that didn't happen. So that's a little bit of fun fact. Yeah, there's not that much other than I'm going to leave you with this one. Guillermo del Toro was really planning on this being a throwback for that gothic romantic storytelling. And so you can see that in basically all of it. Mm-hmm. And he specifically cites Jane Eyre and Rebecca as tonal influences.
Oh, Jane Eyre for sure. I definitely see that.
Watching it today, or not today, but watching it for this recording, I didn't notice before, but at a certain point I was like, this man is literally just quoting Jane Eyre. This is literally a quote from Jane Eyre.
Do you remember what the quote was?
No, not off the top of my head. But yeah, Doug Jones, who you should already know. If you don't know, he's Billy Butcherson from Hocus Pocus, but he's also every monster ever.
Yep.
So he plays a couple of the ghosts, and Javier Botet, I don't know. I'm so sorry. Also played some of the ghosts. So yeah, the house was practical, and so most of the things that you see in it were built to be functional, and so most of that is not CGI. Also, I did not notice this while I was watching it, but some of the furniture was made in different sizes so that when a character goes quote weak, the furniture grows, and when the character grows stronger, the furniture shrinks.
I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice that either.
I did not either.
But that chair she sits in is huge.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave it with that. Those are your fun facts. There are more things that I can say that are fun facts, but the level of fun to those facts is debatable. So Danny, what's this movie about? Because I don't remember from 2 days ago.
Bullshit. Anyway, so this movie is about Edith, who is a budding author. She's telling stories with ghosts in them, but they are not the main source of it's not a ghost story. It's just a plot device in the stories. She is, living her life, living with her father, having a grand old time. And then in walks Thomas, who is a debutante of some sort, and she decides that she likes him, and he proposes to her. He's going to propose to her, and her father finds out some unsavory situations about him and says, fuck no. And he straight up murks her father. Brutally, by the way.
Well, somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody murks her father.
Yes.
It was me.
It was rough, Wiggs.
This is my confession.
So then after the funeral, they get married. He brings her back to Crimson Peak, which is his house. She did not know it was called that when they got married because she had been getting warnings from her dead mother for the entirety of her life since her mother died that said, beware of Crimson Peak. Mm-hmm. So as it turns out, his sister lives there as well. Poisoning ensues. They want her for her money, but then he kind of actually loves her. So let's discuss this. Sorry, it's a weird thing to describe.
It is.
Yeah.
Although while you were describing it, the line did come back to me. So when he's going into the proposal, he's talking about there being something inside him that is tethered to her, and that if that tie was to be broken, that he would basically fall apart. And I was like, there's literally in Jane Eyre, he says, I feel as though a string has been tied to my rib and there's one equal tied to yours. I'm butchering it a little bit. And were that string to snap, I would fall apart completely. Again, butchering the quote, but because I don't have it in front of me. But yes, I was like, bro, that's literally just Jane Eyre.
I feel like we have so many different subjects to start on. Mm-hmm. Or do you all have one you want to pick up with or go with?
I'm good with going with the flow here. I feel like all my points will be hit.
Oh, I will too. It's just like, I just don't know where you want to start because I'm trying to keep them cataloged in my brain.
Do we want to start with the ghosts?
I think starting with the horror is a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah. There wasn't enough of it. Coming from the person that doesn't like horror, I'm like, here's the thing. It's not that I don't like horror. I don't like being scared. Those are two separate things.
I will say I liked the interpretation of the ghosts, though. They are...
Did you?
Oh, I do.
Every time they were on screen, it took me completely out of the movie.
Oh, I love it.
I understand they were CGI from 2015, but they just seemed so poorly done.
Well, so they're supposed to be representative of how they died a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that came through as strong as it could have.
Well, because her mother died of black fever, correct?
Yes, something like that.
I think that's what it said, but that's why her mother is a black entity, which, by the way, that poor child. Mm-hmm. She the first time she ever sees her, she wakes up and her mother is and it's not like her mother, it's this ghostly swirling mist of blackness and everything, and then she she does the very little kid thing that we all did when something scared us in the middle of the night. Is your defense is to roll over and pretend it's not happening.
Right.
And so she rolls away and this ghost comes up and lays her hands on her and practically is hanging on top of her and is beware of Crimson Peak and everything. And I'm like, woman, this is your child. Stop doing this to her. You're scaring the shit out of her.
Well, I definitely get the sense that the ghosts have no concept of what they look like.
Yeah.
They're just energy, essentially, that has a singular focus and purpose, right? So one of the women that died, her whole purpose is find my body, don't let me stay here forever. Mm-hmm. Another one is just deeply depressed about the fact that she couldn't save the baby, which we'll talk about later, right? And one of them really just doesn't want this girl to be next, doesn't want there to be a next, right? And so I thought that they worked, and I thought that they work especially in the context of it being of the Rebecca and Jane Eyre storytelling type, because the ghost, the supernaturalness of those stories is very tame. It's very in the background.
Well, and I can also, with the her scaring the shit out of her own daughter that way, I can understand she's gotten through to her and the desperation of needing to tell her own child that in the future you cannot go here.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't really work out because Edith doesn't know it's Crimson Peak until she's there. But also apparently ghosts know the future. So that's just like the lore piece there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just felt like the ghosts weren't used enough. Like, they obviously were meant to set a tone. There was plenty of times where they were meant to just be creepy as fuck. But it just felt like they existed and not really like that they added to the story.
I think that they would have meant more if that sequence where she's finding out about all of these past women wasn't cut so short.
Yeah.
I think that was a big weakness in it for me, where I was like, but I want to know more about who these women are.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we barely get even a whiff of what they are, you know? But
I love finding out what we do about them, but I do wish it had been
Yeah.
it had been more. You could find out more. The moment where you realize the Papillon was one of these women's dogs, which we as an audience knew, but Edith did not, and she sees the Papillon and is just horrified. Which I love me a Papillon. I don't want a dog, but I like Papillons. They're cute.
I think that the ghosts also would have been more effective if we could see them, I think, just in more instances where the siblings just barely miss them, you know,
sure.
and things like that. So it seems like right now, like, they're playing it off like Edith is crazy and that kind of thing, but to almost have them catch a glimpse of one of them and like have a momentary fear show up, that would have been, I think, more powerful than just having them never see them.
Well, and clearly Lucille can see them because she sees Thomas.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Or
I guess we don't really know if she can. I mean, she sees Thomas, but we don't know
Maybe
if she's
they
ever
allow-
seen any of the other ones.
And maybe it's an allowing situation. Maybe they allow certain people to see them.
yeah, we don't quite get the lore on that and how that works.
I feel like, I guess the thing that made me feel let down by the ghosts is they exist to almost be a bit of a red herring or and that's common, right? Like, let me put this very spooky thing that you think is going to be the quote unquote evil thing, and it's not. It's actually the good thing. The ghosts are trying to help you.
Super nice. Well, except for their mother.
Well, as a ghost, she doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
No, she's more just like even still, she's more like warning her. She says, "Get out."
She also says at one point, his blood will be on your hands, and I don't know what that line is supposed to be, like, referring to. Like, why is she telling Edith that?
I think because she knows that Thomas is going to pay the price at some point. Because if Edith's mom can see into the future, then I'm going to guess that
All of
his
them
mom
can.
does too. Like, all ghosts can see the outcome.
It could
Sure.
also be referring to. It could be referring to Thomas. It could also be referring to her friend, her doctor friend, who shows up.
It's true. And he's an interesting character because he falls into the category of the, like, second choice man that is in
Yeah.
all of these stories, because it's also in, like, Dracula, and it is in Jane Eyre. There's a backup guy. And it seems like that it's always in these, like, stories that there's another guy who's, like, way less problematic. Obviously, girl, you should go to that guy. And they're like, no.
I just kept thinking of him as Raoul from Phantom.
Yes.
Yes.
I was like,
That's
oh, look,
another
it's my
great
Raoul.
example. Yes. Yeah. Like, you should just go with Raoul and just leave. And she's like, no, the Phantom needs me. Yep. Classic second choice guy.
Yeah.
Poor second choice guy.
So what I was saying about the ghosts is we have them as this, like, oh, maybe that's the evil thing, or no, it's not, it's actually they're trying to help you. But I feel like you could almost have the same exact story without the ghosts. Like, they only really help her a couple of times, and really she could have found that stuff out on her own because she's wandering around the house all the time anyway.
Well, they actually do have that story without the ghosts. It's called The Fall of House of Usher.
Well, sure.
Well, she also she gets suspicious without the ghosts.
Exactly. So
Like-
I just feel like they're there to be there and not necessarily there to add to the plot.
My main thing is I think Lucille's gotten cocky because she doesn't even bother to make it seem like she's being nice to her. Like, she says the right things, but in the like most underhanded, snotty way every single time that you're like, I don't believe you, Lucille. Like, you're not even trying.
Well, it makes you wonder if she ever was successful with the other ones either, you know?
Yeah.
Because clearly they were figuring it out before they died too.
Yeah. She just has so much disdain in her voice at every time. And it's like, you're supposed, this is your idea. Like, at least play your role well, bitch.
Well, she doesn't really have much motivation, right? The
No.
only thing she needs to play nice with is to get Edith to sign, like, all of her inheritance over. Mm-hmm. After that, like, she don't need to be nice. This girl can't run anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. By the way, good on her lawyers for making it have to be in halvesies.
Yeah. Well, the thing about Lucille that I think is interesting, because I think, honestly, she's the most interesting character,
Yes, she is.
Mm-hmm.
is that... I wish you knew more about what actually happened with regard to her and her parents, because we don't know when they killed her mom, just that Lucille was 14 and Edward was 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, was their father dead, just not in the picture? Has he died since? Did they kill him too and he's just not playing ghost? Like, we don't really know where that all landed. And we just know that she was sent away, probably to an asylum, is what's implied. And Edward got to go to boarding school. And
Thomas.
Thomas. Why do I keep calling him Edward? What
I
a
don't
weird-
know.
Because Rochester?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so they just kind of glossed over that, and I wished I knew more about that, because I think it makes her motivations make more sense.
It almost feels like they flowers in the attic, these two kids.
I don't know that, so that reference, I mean, I know the book exists, but I don't.
It is so gross.
Yeah.
I agree. We don't really get a clear motivation as to what happened to cause Lucille to kill her mom, other than her mom found out about the kind of intimate relationship between
The incest.
Lucille and Thomas. Well, but that's the thing too. Like at 14 and 12, what were they even doing?
Well, they made it sound like they were just locked in the attic rooms
Yeah.
all the time. And if you're the only friend and relationship and in a very, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, a very trying time of your growth. Ugh.
Well, the reason I wish we knew more about their father is she at one point calls him a brute and describes him breaking her mother's leg and that she had to take care of her mother in bed. Whether that's true or not, we really have no evidence to the contrary or in alignment with that. But she shows at one point, she shows Edith this book where if you bend the pages, you can see in the form of the pages this naughty image. And it's like, where would you have acquired that as a woman? You wouldn't. So, and certainly not as a young woman, and certainly not in a house that's crumbling, would you have found money to go seek this out. So I don't know if the implication is supposed to be that her father abused her and showed her those things, but it certainly makes the most likely culprit of bringing that into the house is her father.
Correct.
Yeah, because Thomas doesn't really give the vibe off of somebody who would have done that.
No. He's too, like, that poor dum-dum. Like, he's madly in love with his sister because that's really the only, like, stable relationship he's had his entire life. But he's so mechanically inclined, he wants this. He's building a machine to mine clay.
Yeah.
And he wants it to work so badly because he's clearly very intelligent and everything. And that's like kind of his single-minded thought right now is, I want this machine to work and I need money to get this machine to work.
But he's entirely emotionally manipulated by his sister.
Yep.
Yes.
And she's had that control since he was real little. Otherwise, it wouldn't work.
But yeah, you do wonder, like, obviously Lucille is the bad guy, but how much of her trauma fed all of that from the house that she grew up in, from being locked away, from, like, whatever happened with her parents.
Yeah. Well, and her mom seemed like, I realize the ghost doesn't seem like terrible. It says get out and, blah, blah, blah. But, like, that woman looked like a bitch.
And she probably was.
And she probably was.
But also it's confusing because she looks way too old in her portrait to make sense. Like, that woman looks like she's like 70. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, let's say that the Sharps are now mid-20s to 30, right? How are we saying this woman gave birth to these kids in her 40s? The math ain't mathin'.
Yeah.
So either she has aged the worst anyone has ever aged, or there's also some confusing things there. Is she actually their mother?
That, that's also a point I didn't think of. If she did just age that terribly, it also could be she's living in terrible conditions.
It's true.
That house literally has a fucking hole through the center of it, and
But-
it's really fucking cold.
But Lucille and Thomas were only 12 and 14 when she died. So she would have
Right.
had to have them, like, basically 50.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The portrait doesn't make sense. Because she would have died when they were teenagers. So what?
And that's a rather indisputable fact because it's in the newspaper. It's like we see all of the like documentation of that woman died when Lucille was 14.
So it almost makes me wonder if their actual mother passed and they were never told about her, and that this is actually their father's mother, and they just have been referring to her as mother their whole lives.
Which is entirely possible. That sort of shenanigans happened all day. It all many that happened back then all the time, where they either the parent figure, the parent that actually had the children was just too young or something, so their parent became the parent, and that's their older sibling or something. There also could be the argument of, because everything is so fucked up in that house, and clearly their father, quotation marks, was, if the story about breaking their mother's leg is true, an asshole. What if that was their daughter that gave birth out of wedlock, blah blah blah, and what happened to her?
Right. There's just a lot of questions I have about all of that.
There is a novelization of the movie that I might have gotten the audiobook for. So if there's more,
you can report back.
I did think after I watched the movie, I was like, this would have done, I think, a lot better as a book.
Or as like a mini series.
Yeah.
Oh God, this would be fantastic as a miniseries.
Well, because I watched it with Pat because he hadn't seen it before. And our big gripe, and I remember this being my big gripe when I watched it the first time too, is the pacing isn't good. It's just like not. And if you did it as a mini series or like, you get 12 episodes, whatever, each episode needs to have an arc. And I think that would have like helped a lot because you get a whole hour at the beginning of the movie where it's just them setting up getting to Crimson Peak.
Agreed. I also think that this movie sort of suffers from aesthetic over substance.
Yes.
Like
Which
the
the aesthetic
aesthetic's
is beautiful.
gorgeous, right? Like this is definitely a movie where you could turn the sound off and just enjoy how pretty it is.
The set is gorgeous. The costumes are gorgeous.
Right? And like there's so many scenes where they do such a really good job of selective color choice, and so everything is in the optometrist's office, that everything is green, reds, and yellows, everything. And it is all like balancing, and they create these beautiful compositions for everything, and you can tell that they thought about each frame as a picture. But
Well, and when you're at Crimson Peak, there's nothing that is red except for like the clay
Yeah.
situation and blood.
That is actually one thing I didn't like, was how cherry red the clay was, because it seemed so fake. And then so when we get the ghosts, which are covered in the clay because they've been buried in those vats, they look like they're just covered in like frosting for a red velvet cake or something. Well,
yeah,
I didn't mind that so much because it is more orange than red, at least to my TV's viewing.
well, and it's, again, leaning into the aesthetic, right? Like they could have made it more of a traditional red clay, but the idea is heightened look.
Well, and it's supposed to be a very specific clay.
I get that. I just think like that choice visually took me out of it. So if it is a visual choice over like realism, it still didn't work for me.
I didn't have that problem.
Nope,
but
me neither.
I liked the sharp red against the blue that was often used.
Blue or green.
Yeah.
There was like I think it's a robe, but I'm not entirely sure because her normal like clothing is not as ostentatiously large shouldered as that like sage green robe that she had on at one point. I was like, ooh, those are some sleeves.
She does have dramatic sleeves in this entire thing.
Except for like when she's wearing her normal like go to town clothes, then they are normal clothes.
And it's like the clothes she wears to go to bed. I'm like, what are you wearing? Yeah. But I do think that I wish we spent more time in Crimson Peak because all we got was flashes of aesthetic, a lot of it. And yeah,
you really only went to a couple places in Crimson Peak. It was like the basement where the vats are and the kitchen, and then that like center area where the whole massive hole is, and then the bathroom and Thomas and her's room. Lucille's room at one point too, where you find out the naughty times.
Well, that's not actually her room. Because one of the things she's like pushing at her multiple times is that she wants her gone. She wants this done so she can have that room back, that ring back, that man back, right? And so that's just where they used to fuck in the attic.
Still grosses me out.
It's super gross. Yeah. Yeah. Like it's to the point where if I saw those two as a romantic couple in another movie, I'd be like, ooh. Don't know about that.
And I love them both as actors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They're both smoking hot.
They are both smoking hot. She has such range, too.
Yeah. I think that's honestly where Lucille went wrong, is that if she just shut the fuck up and said, yeah, you can do whatever you want, honey. Whatever you want. You're not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere, to your point. You know?
Yeah.
Like, so just stay away from her.
Like she's so bad at hiding it, too. Like, when they get snowed in at the depot, she's furious.
Yes.
Well, she's like, you spent the night together. And she's like, yeah, I spent the night with my husband.
I can understand the deterioration of Lucille's character.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because we don't get it. We don't get a lot of time with this, but this is the fourth time they're doing this. So this isn't the like, okay, let's play nice and play house while we, get what we want. It's, you brought this bitch back here. Let's just fucking be done with it. I'm not playing anymore. But the depot thing, like, that's the first time Thomas has been with anybody that isn't Lucille. Like,
well, and she's got red flags going up for her left, right, and center because they were supposed to pick someone else, someone dumber, someone richer, and someone that no one would notice was going to go missing and would be like, wow, it's really sad that her daughter died. And so they were supposed to go after whoever that bitch was that was making snide remarks, her daughter.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, at the beginning. And so she's already looking at it and asks him frequently, why her? Because
she's not dumb.
No. And of course he's brushing it off and being like, oh no, she's just another one. And it's like, nah, boy, you kind of like this one.
You like this one. You like this one a lot.
Yeah, but I do wish, like, for all of the time we had up until them getting married and moving to Crimson Peak, I just feel like I never got enough to, tell me, like, why Edith wants him, like, at all. I understand after her father dies, rushing into a marriage to fill the hole of being alone, but I never really caught on, even before that, why she likes this guy. And then in like the same vein, I never really picked up on why Thomas picked Edith over, like, kind of essentially Lucille. Like, why did he like her? Why was, after marrying 3 other women, was she the one that he was finally like, maybe I do like her?
With Thomas, it makes more sense because Edith is encouraging to him. She tells him not to get down on himself or to doubt himself, and that his machinery is brilliant and shit like that. And Lucille's just constantly controlling him. And so it's not, he's literally never had that before. With Edith, I don't know. She has way more chemistry, honestly, with the optometrist, whatever his name is. I'm sure he's got one. That matters and is important.
We'll just call him Doctor.
Doctor.
I think with Edith, so Thomas reads her manuscript and like gives her notes on it and everything. I think it's a vice versa with encouragement. While her father was, her father kind of placates, but I don't think he really like thinks anything about the writing or whatever being a thing. I think it's one of those, oh, you sweet girl, sure, do what makes you happy. But I think Thomas is encouraging her to write and everything. And I think the encouragement kind of goes both ways on that way.
I guess I feel like I don't really see it, because Dr. Alan McSomething.
Mm-hmm. That's what I also saw.
He's trying to bring her into his world, which, I mean, yes, he's not reading her manuscript, but he's literally showing her all of these like things that he's gotten over his travels and like showing her these pictures and stuff. And you're right. They have way more chemistry. They have that like childhood friends finally getting back together. Like, let's get caught up again chemistry.
I think the thing that keeps them from going forward obviously is the arrival of Thomas, right?
Yeah.
But also before that, they have a comment between the two of them where he maybe pushes too far or something like that, and she says, well, you've been gone a long time. Mm-hmm. And he has to just kind of swallow that. And so the implication is that there probably was some feelings before he went to school or wherever he went, right? And so she's pushing back against that. Like, she won't go to the party where he's going to be at.
Yeah.
Right?
I get the impression, though, it's just that she doesn't like doing that kind of shit, but she'll do it for Thomas.
Right.
The dance was kind of hot, though.
It was so fast.
It was.
That was an insanely fast waltz.
Apparently that's how they do it in Europe.
Sure.
Like, you're not allowed to let that candle go out.
I wonder how many times it went out during filming.
A lot.
I'm sure they just CGI'd the actual flame.
It does almost go out quite a few times, and then...
Mm-hmm. I swear at one point I did see a tendril of smoke that they didn't erase out, but...
I will say, so talking about Thomas and Alan, so we've kind of pussyfooted around the fact that Louise is literally killing Edith. She's poisoning her.
Lucille,
sorry. Louise? Who's fucking Louise? Sorry. Lucille is poisoning Edith. Well, Alan comes running to the rescue, and she's going to kill him and everything. She's already hurt him because she stuck something up his armpit. Ow. But there's this moment with Thomas and him that I fucking love because he's like, I have to do it or she will. And then he just like screams at him with his eyes. He's like, you're a doctor. Show me where. Mm-hmm. Like, show me where to stab you where I won't kill you. Please.
The wild thing to me is at one point Thomas is trying to calm Lucille and is trying to get her to understand that they don't have to keep living in the pit of despair that is Crimson Peak. And he goes, all of us can go.
Oh, that was such a bad decision on his part. You're like, dude, no, don't bring her up at all.
No.
We can just run away.
Leave it at that, man. Like, nope, that was not the right thing to say to that woman at that moment.
Well, she also has a line at one point where and this is after they stay at the depot, and she has to spend the night alone at Crimson Peak, and she's like, I can't be left alone. I can't be left alone. She's like freaking out. So she's got a lot of problems.
It also makes me wonder if the ghosts do show up to her, and that's why she's freaked out to be alone in the house.
It could be. I was more thinking it's probably something that happened when she was sent away.
Which is also possible. Because none of the people, like the men working for him, will stay on Crimson Peak at night.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There aren't really servants. Like, there's the men that he hires to help excavate the clay, but there's not servants.
They can't really afford them.
No, they can't.
Well, here's the thing, though, that sort of like puts a kibosh sort of on the theory that she cannot be left alone, has any real seriousness to it. They travel independent of her long before they show up. She's on her own.
Yeah, she goes home and he stays to help her. He stays with Edith to help her finish off the funeral and all of those arrangements, and then also to get married.
Who knows what Lucille was doing then?
Right.
Maybe she wasn't at Crimson Peak until
that also
right
is
when they got
entirely
there.
true. Also, how long did it fucking take them to get back there? Because Edith's from New York.
Yeah,
And
they're
Crimson
going
Peak
to
is
England.
in England. So we don't know how long that trip took.
Well, and when they show up, she says she's just come from the post office, which sort of implies that she's been there long enough to have settled back in and is doing a task for that day.
Yeah.
Not, I, on my way home, stopped at the post office.
Yeah. So clearly she's been there for at least a couple of days.
Right. So I think it more has to do with she does not want to be without Thomas.
Yeah, and she can sacrifice if she knows, like, we are doing this to get this, like, woman's money, but not, where were you guys? You didn't come home last night. You guys stayed together. That's not okay. Because the other thing, too, is we only see Thomas sleeping with Edith in their bed one time. Like,
and it's sort of implied that he went off, did his thing with Lucille, and then hopped back in bed in the morning because she lays down after having her tea and then jolts awake. Right?
Yeah.
So they could have done 100 different things at that point.
Well, they're poisoning her. They probably sedated her. They put her in bed, and she thinks he's been there all night because she wouldn't fucking know.
so to have one night where Thomas was with Edith the whole night, that would probably piss Lucille off. Especially because she picks up on it real quick that they did the deed.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Thomas finally was like, I want to do it with somebody else.
Besides my sister.
Well, you can see that he really wants to.
Yes.
And there's a moment before that happens where they're up tinkering in his shop and end up making out. And he's like, clearly like, this would be amazing. And then he stops because he heard something. And immediately his sister walks in with the tray of tea and acts as though she's doing him a favor, right? And in reality, he's like...
There's such a casual moment with the tea that I really love where he goes to Edith. He's talking to her. She's got like the teacup in her hand and he takes it out of her hand. He goes, don't drink that. And I don't know why it hits me every time. I'm like, oh.
Well, at that point, he had decided he's not going to go through with it.
But he didn't know that also Lucille put it in the food as well.
I obviously, if I was delirious and sick and in a position where I thought I could trust the people around me, and then I find out I can't, I don't know what I would do. But my first thought is, if she's poisoning the tea, I don't want anything that woman's going to give me.
Oh, I know. I
don't think she wanted to take the porridge. I think she would, but it was like she was forcing that shit into her mouth.
Yeah.
And so like, what are you going to do? Right? Like if you raise suspicion, it's just going to make things worse for you. But I also think the important thing in the dynamic of Thomas and Lucille is that it's made abundantly clear multiple times that he has not been pulling his weight on the killing. Sure, he like lets it happen and he seduces these women and encourages the outcome he knows that's going to happen, but like
he does not ever physically do it.
No, he doesn't put the poison in the tea. He does not. It clearly is not the one killing them, because she makes a comment when Alan shows up and she stabbed him under his arm, right? Are you going to finally do one or something like that? Yeah. And so clearly he hasn't been killing any of these people. She kills Edith's father. And so there's a part of me that almost wonders if Lucille, not only to protect her relationship with Thomas, but also just because she enjoys killing.
Oh, well, I think she very much enjoys killing.
I think one of the big things that would say yes, she is also just somebody who enjoys killing, is the trinkets she keeps, because she has to she cuts off a piece of hair and braids it and keeps it in a drawer of everybody she's killed, including her mother, because that first curl is white.
Yeah.
Also, her father, Edith's father's murder, brutal.
Right?
I forgot how brutal it was until I was watching it this time around. I was like, oh shit, that's right.
It's honestly the most horrific part of the movie.
It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
And then her reaction when she sees him. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's because his face was caved in.
Yeah.
Well, but she's just like, stop, that's my father. You know, he's sweet and he always dresses nicely because he's afraid of it aging and everything. And I'm like, oh, sweetheart.
Well, it's clear that their relationship is closer than a lot of fathers have with their daughters in that time period.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's because it's just the two of them. No other siblings. Mother passed away when she was 10.
He clearly dotes on her.
Yeah.
Well, and allows her freedoms that most men of that time would not allow their daughters.
When she says she's going to come type it up in his office, he's like, sure. Go for it.
Well, he gave her that really pretty pen, and I was like, I want a pretty pen.
Right? Oh, and that pen saves her because she stabs Lucille with it.
Yeah.
She had good aim, too. I was like, yeah, girl, you go right for that.
It's not a killing blow, but like it would hurt.
No, but it...
It would slow you down for a second when you're like, fuck, I've
Yeah.
never actually been injured in this process before. That doesn't feel good.
And
Rude.
With clearly very little thought and knowledge of anatomy, she did pretty well there. The goal was to get away. She did the smartest thing was to run and put herself in the elevator, or at least she couldn't be reached.
Well, the other thing to consider for all the things that she does do, she's very weak, right? Like at a certain point, she's rolling herself around in a wheelchair just to like go to the bathroom to throw up. She can't really get around that well. And part of that is because once she catches them in the act, Lucille goes, oops, you fell over the railing, darling. That's so bad. No.
I don't understand how she only came away with that with like a sprained leg or whatever, because that's when Dr. Man shows up and he has to reset her leg, but she's still using it pretty well after that. So
All
it's not
things
like
considered, yeah.
so it's not like it's a full break.
Yeah.
Well,
And I would have thought she broke her fucking back.
that's what right. She lands on her damn back.
She lands on her back twice. She lands on her back on the railing, goes ka-chunk, breaks the railing, keeps going, and a very small pile of snow.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a very shallow pile of snow. Like, you could make the argument about the snow, but it's not a good one.
No!
The much better argument is that the floor is squishy because there's clay under it.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that when she landed, the clay didn't seep up as if she like went squunk.
They fucked up on that one.
Yeah.
They
That
did
would've
fuck up.
looked
That would
really cool.
Yeah, would have looked really cool.
Yeah. That's a
Oh.
mistake.
Thomas says, no, Lucille, don't. I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah, yeah. Also, with the only thing hanging in the balance for them is that they need whoever this most recent woman is to sign away her rights to her own inheritance. Like, you think at a certain point Lucille would just get better at penmanship.
I know when she was yelling at Edith, when Edith found them out, to just sign the damn paper, I'm like, couldn't you just forge it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly. You especially just get her to sign anything else.
Yeah.
And then practice copying it. I'm just saying she's an emotional killer. She's not a hunter, you know?
No.
Well, and there are many ways to get this kind of fortune and stuff out of a poor sweet dum-dum of a person without murking them. Just saying.
Right?
Well, they need to have Thomas to marry them to get the money, but then they need the girl to go away so that Lucille can have Thomas back. Mm-hmm. I was always kind of like, wouldn't it have been a lot easier if Lucille was the one getting married? Like,
Right. Oh, I suppose that
maybe inheritance.
well, if they're gonna widow her, then yeah.
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 That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I unless the only thought is they are hyper aware of the story being in the paper of them killing their mother, and so another dead man shows up, and pretty quickly people start going, I wonder.
Well, also because in the paper they were very certain that Thomas didn't do anything to their mother, but they weren't sure about Lucille.
Yeah, but if they found 3 women who they've already had Thomas marry and then kill, or Lucille kills, and nobody's been sniffing around, they could have found three men that they could have done that with too.
Here's the thing that I think is pretty wild is people have got to be putting 2 and 2 together on wedding number 4.
You'd think.
By then.
You would think.
Because even when they first show up and Thomas's, I don't know if it's his engineer or whatever, one of the people that he has working with them on that contraption introduced Edith as his wife, and he says, "I know, sir, you've been married a long time.
You've been married for a while now." And she's like, what was he talking about? And he goes, I don't know what he was talking about, really.
Yeah. And so the clearly he knows something's up because it's not like these women all look the same.
No, from the pictures, they look distinctly different.
Right?
Like, that's the other thing. You could have at least found some women that looked remotely the same.
Yeah. And it has not. And then at the post office, when they're there, Edith is given an envelope to the now Mrs. Sharp, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know anyone in Milan, which is where the envelope is addressed from. And the guy's like, nope, it's for you. And it almost makes me wonder if he's just like passive aggressively being like, get out. Because he's also like, oh, you can stay in our storeroom. It's fine. Like, I don't know how the people of the town wait until finally Alan shows up and is like, gives them no explanation, right? He just says, I'm going to the Sharps no matter what. Show up as soon as the storm has passed. And they show up right as Edith and Ellen are coming out, which is not when the storm has passed. It's still blizzarding as they like carry their torches and pitchforks. So like, what the fuck? You can't tell me these people weren't just waiting for their moment to be like, these people are weird and we need to get rid of them.
They just needed one person of like semi-authority to go, this is a problem.
Yeah.
This is a problem.
Now's our moment. We need to go kill these people for sure. Yeah.
Also, Thomas couldn't even kill the dog.
No, because he was supposed to. And
he was supposed to kill the dog, and he didn't.
Just took
I
feel like he didn't. You're right. I still don't give him any credit.
Well, no.
My man's been out here knowing exactly what would happen. Like, just because you're too weak-willed to follow through on it. Like, at least Lucille has, like, the ownership of the blood on her hands. He's sitting here being like, no, I don't want to. It's like, bro, you still did. You're just as guilty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not me giving him any credit. He deserved a lot of things that happened to him, honestly. Mm-hmm. But it just cracked me up that I'm like, well, sir, you couldn't even kill the dog. She did, though.
She did.
That was entirely unnecessary.
That was entirely unnecessary. I was so upset.
It was such a weird moment to kill the dog, too, because it was like, oh, so it's yapping, and I'm annoyed with it, and I'm done putting on this performance. Neck snap. And I was like, okay, but like,
I feel like so upsetting for me, and I don't know. Like, I mean, I know why, but at the same time, I'm like, there's a lot worse in this movie. Why was that so upsetting?
Because we have a weird relationship with animals that we don't apply to strangers that are humans.
Yeah,
it's true.
I feel like the whole reason that they killed the dog at that point, though, was so that they didn't have to figure out how to get the dog out at the end. It's like we don't want to have to deal with. We have 2 humans who are trying to get out of this whole situation, and we can't leave the dog behind because that'll leave too many questions. So we have to kill it. And I'm like, you could have just brought the dog. The dog could have just been there.
The dog could have walked along with. He follows Edith everywhere.
Well, they also could have just like had the dog like yapping from inside the house after they think they're done, and they go back in, and that's when they see Lucille's ghost. Wiggles right corner.
That's a big question, though, what happens at the end, because since Lucille and Thomas are dead, Edith owns Crimson Peak. What do you think she does with it?
Oh, I'm sure she burns that shit to the ground.
I think she leaves it up and lets Lucille live in her own shit.
Yeah, because Thomas does kind of just dissipate.
Well, and the implication from like her little voiceover when she's like talking about how different ghosts show up and how some are attached to emotions and some are attached to patches of land and things like that. The implication is very heavily that she's like, yeah, and she's just going to be sad forever. Boo-hoo.
Fuck you.
Yeah. So I think she just lets Crimson Peak like rot away. That's my theory.
And she ends up with the doctor?
I hope so. The man's earned it.
Right.
Man has earned it.
He went all the way across the pond to
He
rescue
almost
you.
died.
Got stabbed twice.
Yeah.
Almost died.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Not as severely as Thomas got stabbed. Oh,
Yes.
right in the face.
I always hate when he pulls the knife back out. I'm like, stop it. Just let it be in there. Stop. No, you're making it worse. Just stop.
I'm not gonna lie, I hadn't seen this movie until about 2 years ago. And I was like, ooh, it was one of those. So I was working, not at my current job, but I was working and I could watch things in between things when I was doing things. And so I was like, oh, what's this? And I was like, oh, I love Tom Hiddleston. And that was a mistake. It's a great movie and I love this movie, but it was definitely a moment of, oh, this is not a time or place to be doing this.
Especially when his full butt's out, which was nice.
Yeah.
His full butt was out. Though I have things about that sex scene. So,
Tell me your things.
yeah. The sex scene between Thomas and Edith is the first time they are having sex together. So why are all their clothes on? And I'm not saying I needed to see like boobies or anything. You could have shot it however you wanted, but it just seemed weird that she was still fully in her dress. But also like the way that she, Edith, like engaged with sex made it definitely sound like she seemed like she was not a virgin. Like Thomas was not her first time, which is totally fine, but not common back then.
Maybe her and Alan.
That's the story I got in my head.
Right? The story that's being rewritten in my head is that they boned down and he went away to school and she was like, you know what? Fuck you. And it's like, look at what you've wrought. Now you're in a rotting house with a weird man and an even weirder sister.
Lucille confuses me because she shows her the pornographic page thingy, and says that you'll need to get used to things because of Thomas. And it's like, why are you putting these things in her mind if you don't want her to fuck Thomas?
She
I'm
likes
guessing-
to toy with them.
Yes. And I'm also guessing she likes to confirm that they haven't done anything in their travels. Though at one point, every time when Edith walks in on Thomas and Lucille together, my brain, completely ignoring the gross incest, my brain just goes, you could all just three be together and be happy. Like, this is unnecessary drama at this point.
Just
If they weren't
slowly convince
siblings.
Edith that it's cool and it's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that would have worked out so well.
Right.
Yeah.
It is pretty hot when they walk in. Like, if you're not thinking about the fact that they're siblings,
Yes.
you're like, oh, siblings. Remember. Because her hand is like fully down his pants.
Yes, this is true.
So harder transition here, but just because we're talking about all these relationships, we, like you said, get almost no information about the past marriages, but we do find out about an incest baby. And that, like, I'm sure the point of that plot point, because it just comes out of nowhere really, is to show like how Lucille is really into this relationship with Thomas. So much so that she gets pregnant and has a baby.
And he obviously is not well because incest.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason that they chose, I believe it was Enola,
Yes.
that they chose Enola, is that Enola said that she could save the baby.
Well, I assume that was after they got married, but they don't really talk about kind of when that all comes to light. But yeah, that means that, did Enola know that it was Thomas and Lucille's baby? Or was she just like, oh, your sister's randomly pregnant and then she has a baby that has special needs?
I mean, I've got to assume the second, right?
You'd think.
You would think that she would not be like, unless the only thing I could think is if she did find out that it's an incest baby, and the implication is if you don't save this baby, we will kill you.
Yeah,
Right.
she could have been using it as a ploy to prolong her own existence in the world and try to figure out how to. I mean, I believe she didn't want the baby to die, but because she her ghost is holding the infant child. Like I'm sure she really did care about this baby and try to save it and everything. But I do wonder if she found out and then was kind of using it as an extension to try to save herself as well. I mean, I would.
Right. Yeah, because we get some, is it Enola that has what is the term?
The wax cylinders.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of that machine is. It's not a gramophone, but it's similar. And the way she and Thomas talk to each other is very kind of like, I would say, of the time, where they're just don't really encourage, they don't really like love each other. She didn't seem like she was in love with him at all.
Well, she does ask him to say "I love you" on the gramophone.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
Yeah, he just says random garbage.
I think it's a nursery rhyme sort of thing. But yeah. So I think she, by that point, was starting to realize that this was not a love match situation. But I don't think she realized that at the time of that recording where she first got the machine, that she was in danger. Because then later on, as you listen to later recordings, she realizes what's happening to her, that she's being poisoned.
Yeah.
And,
It does seem like the timeline for people has been getting shorter and shorter.
Sure. That's because
Because-
Lucille seems pretty desperate to like get the money and get them out the hell out of there.
Because like with the other women, there are like pictures of them together and everything. There isn't any of that with Edith and Thomas.
No.
They've not taken pictures together. They're really not even very much living their everyday lives together all that much.
Well, and it also makes you think that she's probably upped the poison, and kind of getting back to your point, where she's stopped performing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's just like, no, I'm done with this shit.
That is my bedroom.
Yeah. Well, when she's feeding her and she's on her way out, and she makes the comment of, "I promise you'll be out of this bed before you know it." And you're like, ugh. Yeah.
So this is totally off the wall and kind of dumb, and I probably will end up cutting it out. But whenever I watch like period movies and there's a couple in bed together, I'm like, it was so small. How?
Yeah, but if you look at TV shows or anything, their beds are so small.
I know.
I'm like, the thing that always gets me is when it's supposed to be like a rich couple and they have very clearly just like a full size bed. I'm like, I get that you're on a set and whatever, but that is so unrealistic.
It
Also,
really
people
is.
used to be smaller.
That's
That's
true.
the other thing to keep in mind. Like, if you ever like go into some of these like older houses that are big and fancy, right? The ceilings are so low.
Yes.
The doors are so fucking small. The staircases are insanely tight. People just were used to everything being smaller because they all were smaller.
Well, they've done studies, and people are actually quite a bit taller than they used to be.
Yeah.
Granted, I have noticed we are in the Midwest. We are taller folk than.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
So like when me and Pap went to Vegas, it was so great. We could always see each other because we were the tallest people around. Just like, oh, there's the tall man.
And that's the funny thing, is because you and Pappy, like, it's not like you're short, but you're not tall by any means either.
Yeah, he's 6 foot and I'm like 5'8.5", 5'9", depending on how much I stretch.
Well, like, but I love to think about the fact. So my grandfather is 90 years old.
Yeah.
He is 6'2". And so for being 90 years old, was he a freak in his day?
I don't think so. My great grandpa was that tall too.
This is my grandfather, and then his dad was 6'4".
Right. So I think people were.
Yeah, my grandparent, or not my paternal grandfather, but my maternal grandfather, I think was a very tall man.
It's the Midwest. I think it's because we have like Germanic and Scandinavian
Norwegian
backgrounds for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jawohl.
So we've talked about that, Thomas got stabbed in the face, and ultimately that's what kills him. And that we talked a little bit about the fact that Lucille got stabbed in the chest by the pen, but her actual ending is a shovel to the noggin. And I love it.
I do appreciate though that it is the two ladies duking it out at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so I watched this movie with my sister a couple nights ago, and I made the comment, and I regretted it instantly, but also not enough. Not enough for me not to repeat it now, which was that she turtled her neck. because she goes and splats it on her head, and then it goes into her neck. So there's that for you all to mull over. She turtled her neck.
I love that she uses Thomas as a distraction and then just bashes her skull in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you know what? I'd do it too. No shame.
Well, no, you're trying to survive.
Yeah.
Against
bitch
a lady
deserve it.
who is chasing you around and trying to stab and slash you.
With the cleaver she murdered her mother with, which is a terrifying cleaver too.
Pretty common meat cleaver.
I mean, I
for the
know,
time.
but like,
Or like butchery.
I don't butcher. Well, I can't say that because I hunt, but I don't butcher with that kind of thing.
No.
Yeah. Shovel to the noggin. Love it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also love that it is Edith saving herself. Like, yes, the men came to her rescue in certain ways, but ultimately she is the one that gets herself out of that situation.
Well, Dr. Allen doesn't really do much.
No, he tries.
He gets stabbed right the fuck away.
Yep.
I guess he sets her leg after she falls, so good on him. And Thomas just kind of lets...
He's a distraction for a little bit.
Yep.
He saves Alan.
Alan would not have... If he hadn't showed up, she would have just killed her the rest of the way.
Oh, for
yeah.
sure, yeah.
So
without him being there, Edith would have died after that fall.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thomas is a distraction for a little bit, at least,
Yes.
to allow Edith to get things in brain and figure a little bit out.
I do think it's a little wild that Thomas did not at any point think that he could become a victim of his sisters.
Oh yeah, it never occurred to him that she would murder him, which is terrifying. I'm like, oh honey.
Yeah, but like from his perspective, right, they are in love and everything Lucille is done to keep them together and safe.
Oh, the warping of reality.
Yeah. Though, I mean, on some level, that's probably what Lucille thinks she's doing too.
Oh yeah, her reality is just as warped as his is.
Yeah. She thinks she has to do these things.
I don't know. I don't give her that much credit. I think that she genuinely believes she's in love with him and justifies everything else around that. Because she has a conversation with Edith as she's like cutting her hair and taking her little trophy, right? Where she's like, this is a kind of love that you do horrible things for and all
Yeah.
this. And it's like, nah, I don't think she's actually got anything remotely that could be akin to good intentions.
Oh, I don't think I mean, like, I believe she's fully aware of what she's doing. I think she's just justifying them to herself.
Yeah, I don't believe she even thinks she has good intentions.
What I'm saying is I don't think she thinks she needs to justify it to herself. She justifies it to Thomas, but I don't think in her mind she's getting what she wants because she deserves it. Like when they talk about Thomas giving her the ring in order to propose, when they talk about Lucille giving Thomas the ring to propose, she says, I'm going to want that back. I earned it. Right? So in her mind, I don't think she feels guilt about any of it.
God, she rips that ring off of Edith's hand too. Ow.
She earned it by killing her mother.
Yeah. I don't think she feels guilty about anybody she's ever killed. I don't think she even feels bad about her baby dying.
It didn't seem like she wanted the baby because she says like they should have just like let it die right away.
But she wanted it.
Yeah.
Or thought she did.
Yeah, I don't think she actually wanted it. I think she justifies that as well, saying that I think she saw it as an extension of herself, which is how narcissists work.
Well, I think also there is something to be said about, she talks about her mother calling them monsters. And I think that she leans into that identity too as a way of normalizing things. Right?
Well, when your parent and society as a whole tell you that you are the outcast, that you are the monsters, at some point you just go, okay, fine, fuck it, I am the monster.
Yeah. Well, I think we've come to a natural end here.
Yeah.
So I think it might just be time for ratings time.
I guess, what is your spice rating?
I mean, it's got more spice than the average movie.
The kisses are good.
The kisses are good.
But is there like a lot? No. So I guess like I'll give it a 2.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of a 2. There's not a lot, but what we do get is good. Mm-hmm. I know you were a little annoyed that there were clothes on.
It's just unrealistic. It's not like I'm annoyed in the sense of I wanted to see them with their clothes off. It just seemed so unrealistic that they would still have their clothes on in that moment.
Maybe it's cold.
That's what blankets are for.
I'm aware.
That's what vigorous activity is for.
Also aware. What's your rating, Liz?
I'm going to give it a 1.5. Okay, maybe with the kisses, because the kisses were really good. I'll give it a 2.
Okay. Twist your arm. Gavel, gavel?
Yeah, it's a gavel gavel moment.
A romance?
I struggle with this because I really didn't see enough romance. Like, I understand that romance and love is the plot device that gets Thomas to kind of break away from his sister. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole reason Alan comes to save Edith. And so... But it wasn't enough. It just felt like a lot of their actions were justified because I was like told they're doing this because of that, not, oh, it makes sense at this point that this person would make that choice.
So your rating is
2.5.
Fair.
I actually agree with the 2.5. There's just not enough showing of the romance.
Yeah.
Show me the romance. I like it. I like what I see. Ultimately, it's also very conflicting because he is allowing these things to happen to her, regardless of if he's the one doing them. He's letting it happen. He knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also agree with the 2.5. I think this movie, though, is not really meant to be romantic. It's romantic gothic. Mm-hmm. And so it is romantic in presentation, not romantic in storytelling. So I'm not bothered by there being less romance in this story because it's not really the story that's being told.
I'm not either.
I guess I am bothered because that is the motivation for the characters, is their romance or their love or whatever. And so if you're going to tell me that that's their motivation, then I need to also see them act according to their motivation.
I mean, sure. I think if he is leaning on these stories where it is horror, romance, romantic gothic, that's not what those stories are like. And so if that's the story he's telling, I'm not bothered by it. Yeah.
What about overall?
Oh, you want me to start? I'll be honest. So I watched this movie roughly about the time it came out. I remember watching it and being kind of let down and then kind of forgetting and rewatching it now and then again being let down. So like visually makes up for a lot. The acting is superb. So like I hover between a 2.5 and a 3. I'll be honest. I'm going to land on a 3. But I just feel like there's so many aspects of the story and the characters that are unrealized. So that's where I land.
All right. What about you, Wiggs?
So I kind of change my mind every time I watch this movie. I noticed details that I didn't notice before on this watch through and things like that. I think it is the perfect movie to watch around spooky season. If you don't actually want to get scared and you just want something that's vibes, right? All that said is I do remember when it first came out and having a similar reaction of being disappointed, and especially because this is the same storytelling voice that gave us Pan's Labyrinth. It's the same voice that gave us The Shape of Water, right? So the fact that it doesn't have the emotional punch that I'm waiting for was really the thing that I was disappointed in, not necessarily in the storytelling itself, but that like emotional factor. At the end of it, I'm not sad or really anything other than, the story's done, like, so, I will probably rewatch this every few years going forward, and so that to me pulls it up to a 3.5. Like, there are things about it where I'm like, this isn't my favorite thing, and I don't overly enjoy it or want to seek it out. And most of the things that I do, I look for in other stories. Like if I want the more romantic version of this, I might go to Jane Eyre, right? Yeah. So 3.5 is where I land.
Okay, so I go mostly on vibes. And, I did describe before that I watched this on a random thing, knowing nothing about it when I first watched it, and was like gobsmacked. And I love it every single fucking time. And I give it a 4 solely because I finished watching it this time and then immediately wanted to restart it. And that doesn't happen for me very often. I know you guys tease me that I watch the same things over and over and again. And I do with like certain TV shows and stuff that are just like my cozy ADHD comfort shit. I don't watch movies immediately over again. That's not how I do. And that will drive me, in fact, completely insane. So I don't do that, but I did want to restart it over again.
Well, I think that leads us to recommendations.
My recommendation is the show Penny Dreadful. It has all the gothic, all the romance that gothic romance can offer, but and is entirely of that flavor. So just go check it out. I'm not going to give you anything else. Check it out. If you haven't already watched it, you're missing out.
I forgot about that show. Now I need to rewatch it. My recommendation would be both the movie and the TV show of Interview with the Vampire. So that very like, it's not horror, but like it's like that like romanticized horror creeping in on the edges. And the TV show I really liked. And
I'm a few episodes in and I'm really loving it.
Yeah. And it's a bit slower pace, so I think that kind of feels more appropriate for this movie, especially the beginning of the movie.
So mine does go into full-on horror because, it was shocking. I love horror. But I would say The Haunting of Hill House. It kind of switches back and forth. I don't have a better way to say it between like modern and the romantic. But the Hill House itself is that a little more like romanticized place. Very gothic, romantic as far as a setting is concerned. And then it switches into, the normalcy of everyday life and everything. It is truly horror, but there is some really cute love stories in The Haunting of Hill House, the show.
There's one that breaks my heart every time I watch it.
So fucking bad. Oh, so much.
Is it Lucy? Yeah. I'm not okay every time.
Oh no, bawling hysterically. But yeah, so there is some really, I won't say similar because this is in no way similar, but there is the gothic romantic versus everyday like modern life and everything. So
Sure.
Well, and if you did want the more gothic, you could also look at Bly Manor.
Exactly. Yes.
Which is in the same family. It's not like a sequel season, right? But
much like American Horror Story, it's all the same actors. Which it's very good too.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Well, that's the end, folks. If you like this episode, you can find us out there on the socials at Wrong Dust Jackets, primarily on TikTok and Instagram, but you can find us pretty much everywhere. Also, you can go to our website at wrongdustjackets.com to find a list of episodes that we've done, ones that are upcoming. Check out our blog post for reviews of books that don't make it into full episodes. And then we would absolutely love it. It would make our lives so very happy if you would give us 5 stars, a like, a comment, whatever is available to you on wherever you are listening to this. That would just help us immensely. That's all I got. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.